if you or someone you love needs more vegetables in their diet but does not really like vegetables, you might want to sneak some vegetables into mac and cheese, one of the more popular, gooier dishes that we all enjoy and that is typically not that healthy. This recipe is still not exactly healthy, but it is a healthier version of mac and cheese that I think should become a regular in your meal rotation. So I'm starting with some mixed short pasta, mixed only because I just didn't happen to have a bunch of one kind of pasta. I had a bunch of leftovers of other kinds of pasta, but it's totally acceptable to mix your types of pasta together. And now I'm using some not yogurt, that's milk that I had in the freezer. It was about to go bad, so I froze it, and using defrosted milk in mac and cheese is great. And that is not feta either. It is defrosted frozen pumpkin puree. You can use canned pumpkin puree, but I use fresh. And this is a block of cheddar cheese that you get at the supermarket, cut into cubes because I'm too lazy to grate it. It's totally cool. Here is a giant pot of water that is salted, waiting to boil, and a smaller pot. Now that milk, we're going to heat it up in just the microwave. When I made this video, I did not have a 4-cup Pyrex measuring cup, but if you have a 4-cup measuring cup, use that instead because we're using about 3 cups of milk total. Meanwhile, while your milk is warming, I get a couple tablespoons, I think it's like 3 tablespoons of butter on a pot on the stove on medium heat. And we're going to add an equal portion, so 3 tablespoons of flour to that butter. And what we're doing here is we are making what is called a roux. And this is what's going to thicken our milk and in turn our cheese sauce later. So you really just want to evenly incorporate the flour into the butter until till you don't see any white left in the bottom of the pot. And then you just want to cook it, stirring constantly for a couple minutes until it doesn't have a raw flour taste to it anymore. You don't have to physically taste it, just, cook it, stirring for a couple minutes. And then you're going to start pouring your warm milk in. I start with just about a half a cup of milk, and you stir it rapidly because you don't want lumps. And immediately, as you can see, it thickens into a very thick paste. Pour a little more milk in, and the same thing, just stir it rapidly. It might not look like it's going to incorporate, but keep at it and keep mixing it, and it will incorporate into a thick paste. If you were to add the milk all at once or cold, the flour roux would not incorporate very well, and you can very easily get lumps in there. So it really is worth it to warm up your milk and to also add it in smaller batches like this. You can also use a whisk if you're worried about lumps, but I find a wooden spoon is really good for getting the bits off the bottom of the pot. But here I am using a whisk like a hypocrite. Now, the boiling water. When it starts boiling, add the pasta, and do not cook to the package's directions. You want to undercook this by about 2 to 3 minutes of what the package tells you to. Meanwhile, the milk, all of it has been poured into the roux, and it looks pretty thin. But believe me, this is thicker than actual milk, and it will thicken even more once this mixture comes to the boil. And I am adding the cheese now. And again, I don't feel like grating it because it'll melt eventually in the cheese sauce if you just cut it roughly into cubes. It saves time and it prevents you from dirtying a cheese grater, which is annoying to wash anyway, so just chop it and stir it. And as you can see, it's already getting thicker just from the cheese. That's another reason why it's okay to make a thinner bechamel sauce. And now it's a beautiful yellowy orangey color, but we're gonna make it even more beautiful in color by adding our pumpkin puree. So that's the other benefit of adding pumpkin puree to mac and cheese. It's not just the flavor or the nutrition, it is the color. But before that, we're gonna add pepper and paprika, which is my other secret for giving it a really nice orangey color. Okay, now the pumpkin puree goes in. And as you can see, I'm only adding about a cup to the entire dish, so it's not that much. You can add more if you want. If you add much more than a cup to this recipe, though, it will taste much more pumpkin-y. With just a cup, you're not really going to taste the pumpkin unless you absolutely know it's there and you're really sensitive to it. But as you can see, it's brightened it up and made it a much orangier orange, and it's made it a little bit thicker too. Now this cooked mixed pasta that we have, that's about 2 minutes undercooked, and I mean 2 minutes undercooked from al dente, so 3 minutes undercooked. I'm lining it in my casserole dish. This is the same casserole dish I had it in before, just to make sure that the whole thing would fit in this casserole dish. And I just pour the cheese sauce in there to mix it in. And make sure that the cheese sauce gets in all the nooks and crannies of the pasta. This is gonna look like it's too much cheese sauce, as if there were such a thing, but it's going to soak up into the pasta as it cooks, so it's actually a really good amount. You bake that off in the oven for about 20 minutes or so until it starts to brown on top, and you have beautiful, bubbly mac and cheese. And if you stay quiet, no one will know it has vegetables in it. I like to use just a giant spoon to serve it rather than a knife because it's not going to come out in a clean slice anyway when it's fresh from the oven. If you care about that sort of thing, let it get cold and then slice it, serve it, and reheat it. But I mean, it tastes so much better fresh from the oven. You'd be doing yourself a disservice to do that. So just scoop it out and gloppiness onto the plate. No one really cares. And I actually like to serve it, my boyfriend got me into this, serve it with peas and carrots. The sweetness of the peas and carrots is a really nice contrast, adds extra nutrition, and peas and carrots are like some of the cheapest frozen vegetables that you can get. So there you have it, pumpkin mac and cheese. Now, if you're trying to sneak this into somebody's diet, just don't tell them there's pumpkin in it. And then after they tell you how much they loved it, say, oh, that's great. By the way, there's pumpkin in it. For a full write-up of the recipe with all of the specific amounts, check out the video description below. And I do hope you give this recipe a try. Bye!